The storm hit the small town of Ashford, Colorado, with a violence that seemed almost personal, tearing at rooftops, rattling windows, and swallowing the night in thunder. But inside an old, dimly lit trailer at the edge of town, the real storm was happening inside a young man named Marcus Hale, whose shaking hands hovered over a worn duffel bag containing the last remnants of a life he had broken one bad choice at a time. The sound of the rain pounding on the metal siding felt like the world reminding him of every failure, every disappointment, every person he had pushed away. And in that moment, with everything he had ever cared for lost or drifting, Marcus wondered if a person could become so shattered that no amount of hope could ever piece them back together again. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of grace, please like this video, share it, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment to help this story reach more hearts. Marcus had not always been a man living in the shadows of his own regret. Growing up in the outskirts of Phoenix before moving to Colorado in his early 20s, he had once been the kind of person neighbors described as light-filled and hopeful. His mother, a gentle woman named Caroline, used to say he carried peace the way others carried breath. But when she died suddenly in his junior year of high school, everything bright seemed to dim. Grief carved a void inside him, and by the time he reached adulthood, he had filled that growing emptiness with the wrong friends, the wrong risks, and eventually the wrong addictions. When his younger sister, Natalie, begged him to get help, he pushed her away. When a local church group reached out, offering support and counseling, he ignored their calls. He spiraled so far from who he had been that he no longer recognized his own reflection. The trailer he lived in now wasn't truly a home but a consequence, something cheap enough to afford but forgotten enough that no one cared who came or went. Marcus spent his nights convincing himself that he was beyond saving. He believed he had disappointed too many people, broken too many promises, and fallen too far from grace. But something inside him shifted the night the storm rolled in. It wasn't a moment of clarity or sudden revelation. Rather, it was the quiet realization that he was tired of running, tired of hurting, tired of pretending he didn't want more from life than survival. As thunder cracked the sky open above him, Marcus decided to leave. He didn't know where he was going, only that staying meant dying slowly. He zipped the duffel bag, stepped outside into the cold rain, and began walking toward the highway, hoping to outrun the ghosts of his past. The streets glistened in the stormlight, and his clothes clung heavily to his skin. The wind stung against his face, but he didn't turn back. Miles away, a small diner named Harper's Mill still glowed faintly through the storm, a place Marcus had visited only once months before. Something about that warm yellow light soaked through the darkness and drew him in like a beacon. He pushed open the door, shivering as the bell above him jingled. The scent of rain-soaked asphalt and old coffee filled the air. Behind the counter, a middle-aged waitress named June Whitaker glanced up, her eyes softening with recognition. She remembered him, the young man who once came in looking exhausted and lost, but who had thanked her with a sincerity that stayed on her mind. Marcus sank into a booth, his heart pounding as if it feared being hopeful. June quietly placed a cup of hot coffee in front of him, her voice steady, calm, and free from judgment. She didn't ask where he had been or why he looked like he had just walked through his own version of hell. She simply offered warmth. Small acts of kindness like that had always shaken Marcus more than harsh words ever could. He wasn't used to gentleness. He didn't think he deserved it. As he warmed his hands on the cup, Marcus noticed a flyer on the counter near the register, a simple white sheet with a bold headline about a local community shelter named Newbridge Haven, offering hot meals, heated beds, counseling, and volunteer-led faith programs. Something in him resisted immediately. Pride? Shame? Fear? Maybe all three. But deeper than that resistance was a quiet whisper, almost like the echo of his mother's voice telling him he still had time to turn back toward the light. The storm subsided slowly as dawn approached, and when Marcus finally stepped back outside, he realized he didn't feel quite as alone as he had hours earlier. He walked toward the shelter with heavy steps, uncertain if he would be turned away or judged. Instead, he was greeted by a tall man with warm brown eyes named Pastor Reed Dolan, who welcomed him like someone returning home after a long journey. Marcus hesitated, his throat tight with emotion, but Reed's presence was steady and patient in a way Marcus hadn't felt in years. During the days that followed, Marcus struggled with the weight of his past. He faced withdrawal, guilt, the raw ache of missing his family, and the fear that he wasn't strong enough to rebuild. Nights were the hardest. He lay awake on a narrow cot in a shared room, listening to the soft breathing of others who were also fighting their own battles. Sometimes he felt like running again. But every morning, Reed checked on him. June stopped by the shelter with extra pastries, and one of the volunteers, a kind young woman named Rachel, encouraged him to keep going, reminding him gently that brokenness didn't disqualify him from redemption. The turning point came one afternoon when Marcus found himself standing outside the church connected to the shelter. The building was small, humble, and peaceful, surrounded by tall cottonwood trees that swayed gently in the breeze. He walked inside, expecting emptiness, but instead found a single candle burning near the front pew. The flickering light illuminated the room in a soft golden glow, and something inside Marcus cracked. He sank to his knees, overwhelmed by a mixture of grief and longing. He didn't pray with eloquence or perfect words. Instead, he let tears fall, tears for his mother, for the sister he had hurt, for the person he had become, and the person he hoped he might still be. And in that vulnerable moment, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: peace. Not all-consuming or dramatic, just a quiet reassurance, as if grace had found him on that cold wooden floor. With time, Marcus began attending counseling sessions, joining group meetings, and helping around the shelter. He found meaning in serving meals, cleaning rooms, and repairing broken furniture. Every small task reminded him that he still had purpose. Slowly, he began believing in second chances, not just for others, but for himself. Months later, on a warm spring morning, Marcus worked up the courage to reach out to Natalie. He wrote her a long letter, explaining everything: his struggles, his regrets, and his desire to make things right. He didn't expect forgiveness, but he hoped for a chance to try again. When her reply arrived a week later, filled with love, cautious optimism, and an invitation to reconnect, Marcus wept openly. Healing wasn't quick or easy, but it was real, and it was happening. He eventually found work at a local construction company, saving money and attending church on Sundays. The day he moved out of the shelter into a small but decent apartment, June brought him a home-warming pie, and Reed prayed over the new chapter of his life. Marcus felt humbled by the kindness of people who had no obligation to care for him but chose to anyway. Years later, when Marcus stood in front of a group of newcomers at the shelter, men and women who stared at the floor with the same shame he once carried, he spoke with a strength born from survival. He told them that redemption rarely arrives all at once. It comes in small mercies, quiet kindnesses, and the courage to take one more step forward even when the darkness feels overwhelming. He told them that no one is too broken for hope, and no life is too scarred for grace. And when he finished speaking, he glanced toward the doorway, where Natalie had come to volunteer that day. Their eyes met, and she smiled, softly, proudly, lovingly. In that moment, Marcus realized that the greatest miracle wasn't that he had survived his darkest years. The miracle was that he had learned to live again, to forgive himself, and to walk in the light of a future he once believed he didn't deserve. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, subscribe, and comment to support this channel. Your engagement helps us keep creating stories that inspire and uplift. Before we end, tell me in the comments, what part of Marcus's journey moved you the most? Thank you for listening, and may grace find you wherever you are today.